My name is Michael Harcan. I work for CSL Bearing and I'm the C&Q SME. In my role, basically, one of the main functions is to try to get all the sites that we have at CSL to globally align on a single framework, right? Previously, what we worked as is, I guess, site-based silos. Before, it was very individual, right? I mean, each site had their own ways of working. They had their own documentation practices. They had their own ways of working. And it wasn't very transparent, right? You wouldn't really know what was happening at one site compared to another because they've been doing it that way for more than 20 years in that individual way. So what it looked like is a mismatch of different things. And when we implemented Kneat, it's really a consolidation into a single streamlined process. We started on our journey for harmonization a few years ago, right? And we started on this journey by first creating different groups. So we had a global team and we had local teams for harmonization, and we started on a very paper-based system. And what we found is that it was a real struggle to actually try to get teams to harmonize on a paper-based system because they could always fall back onto their typical ways of working, right? When we implemented Kneat, what it allowed us to do is start fresh. We were able to implement a workplace structure that meant that they had to use the templates that were in the system. It also meant that we could enforce our framework that we really wanted sites to use, and they weren't able to, I guess, fall back onto things that they were maybe typically using or things that they wanted to use, right? They really were forced to engage with us on a global level. I think there's three main benefits that I can really point to. The first one is resource sharing, and I think that is a really important one in today's day and age. We know that most work happens on a cyclic basis. We have peaks and troughs that occur. So during a shutdown, for example, we know there's going to be a high peak where a department's going to be understaffed. There's going to be more work than they can really handle. And then a few months later, it's going to be overstaffed. They're not going to have enough work to do. What Kneat unlocks is the ability for us to resource share between those departments. We can take someone from Australia or from the US and we can say, we have another project for you halfway across the world. Because of the commonality, the standardization of the framework, they already know in the workplace structure where to look for the documents. They're already really familiar with the templates. So it unlocks the ability for us to be able to resource share and even out those peaks and troughs. It's a really huge benefit for us to be able to resource share. Another key benefit is reducing the administrative burden on teams. So whereas previously each site had to maintain their own templates, now we're in a centralized system. So it means that only we have one common template that's shared between all the sites. So when we have something like an update to our best practice, or we have an update to because of an audit finding, we're able to update one template and not worry that each site has to update their own template, which would usually cost them their own dedicated resource. It reduces that overhead, right, to actually be compliant with maybe what the latest standards and regulations are. The final point that I would say really benefits us is we had this experience quite recently on one of our sites in Australia where we had a regulator visit our site for a new facility. And what we found is, they asked all the typical questions. It was a fairly standard, first startup audit. But then they went to our site in Germany where we had a sister facility that was just starting up, and it was the same facility. And we found that the questions that they asked were basically the same. And what they were looking for is inconsistency between the two sites. When we implement something like Kneat, we have the confidence that we have the consistency in testing and in templates. That means that the auditors aren't going to find that we do things differently between one site and another site. And yeah, it builds their confidence in them that internally we know what we're doing.